Welcome to Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, brought to you by Holy Chuck Burgers. Our business is burgers.
Good morning, Katarina Witt. There's no such thing as bad boys, only boys with bad hair.
Sponsored by Maxwell's Clothiers, your bespoke tailor since 1961. And now, your host of Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo, Chuck Bastie. And welcome back. This is a new edition of Chuck's World of Infinite Mojo. I am Cam LaRock, your producer, and for once, I think I'm the best dressed guy on this podcast. Chuck, where's your suit, man?
Yeah, Maxwell Clothiers is not going to be happy with me today, but
What the hell?
But there's a method to my madness, Cameron. So our guest today is tied to these guys.
Shorzy. All right.
So I got my Shorzy shirt, and I want to thank Jared Kizo. He sent me a big box of swag, of Shorzy gear, like hoodies. Like he literally couldn't have put more swag in this box without having something being broken. He stuffed it, and then he stuffed it like the Grinch. You know, like it was unpacking. Like that's how much it was. It was just full of swag. So I want to thank Jared Kizo for sending us the Shorzy swag, and there's obviously a tie to my madness today because we have former NHL coach Ted Nolan on the show today, and his two sons are the beauties called the Gyms, which we'll get into on the show as well.
Yeah, we'll save that more for later. Let's not give away too much of what we're going to talk about, but yeah, I mean, we have a great guest coming up, a former Jack Adams winner, so it's not every day we have one of those on the podcast.
Or ever.
Exactly.
He's our only Jack Adams coach that we've had him on the podcast as well. So without further ado, let's bring up Ted Nolan. And there he is. Ted, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me on, Chuck. Cam, thanks very much.
Yeah, honestly, I've been nipping at your heels for years to try and make this moment finally happen because unbeknownst to you, I'm a big fan of Ted Nolan, and I have been for a while. And as this podcast kind of unfurls, you'll see why. I'm going to keep this as a surprise to you as well. But I'm really glad to have you on the show as well because actually, I got your book. And I got it in St. Catharines as well back in the fall. And, you're in St. David, so it's only a couple kilometers down the road for you as well. But I just and this is kind of funny because you and I had talked about this, and I used to say to you all the time, Ted, you have to write a book. Like you have to put this down. And you and I had a conversation one time, and you just said, okay, well, I've got some news coming up, Chuck, and I'll let you go with that. And I thought it was the TSN article that came out, but it turned out you were actually writing a book. And I just thought we'd just talk a little bit about, the process for you. How was the process? Was it cathartic? Was it frustrating? I mean, writing books are hard. So how was it for you?
First, I think it was very, very therapeutic. And I remember you mentioning a book a number of times, but tell you the truth, I had no really intentions of doing it, except one day I did an interview on, I think it was maybe 4 years ago, about truth and reconciliation. And we're talking about some of the tragedies that happened and some of the misjustices that happened, and I got really emotional on the interview, and it was a hard interview to do and even to finish. I don't even think we finished it. And someone from Penguin Books saw the interview and thought it would be a interesting story to tell. So they contacted us. I talked it over with my family for a little bit, and so we finally made the decision to speak, because I during the George Floyd incident, one of the police officers said if you're complicit, you're part of the problem. And I just felt, some of the things that I went through without speaking about it. Maybe some kids are going through the same things that I went through now, and by speaking about it, hopefully it can make a difference.
100%. And that's what I said to you before. I mean, you writing a book, because you're a big fish in your community, and like you've got a great story, and that's why I wasn't trying to make points off your book, but I just knew that you had a great story, and that story just needs to be told. And the way I explain this, in other words, is like Sheldon Kennedy, for example, one of my heroes, because I always say that there's some people out there that can go through trauma and they become addicts, and then some people can go through trauma, they become addicts, and then they can get clean. And then there's fewer people that can go through trauma, be free and clear of addiction, and then come on the other side, not only sort their own life out, but use their story as a message to help others who are going through the exact same addiction or trauma that needs to be healed. And that's generational. And I really see your story being very aligned like that, where you can use your story. And that's not for the faint of heart. I mean, that takes a lot of work, and that takes a lot of therapy and a lot of, resolution. But I'm really glad to see that you shared your story as well. When I was reading your book, a lot of things came up to me on my side. I was really happy to see that you got to the side of empathy, and that was the great connector for me, were all the things that, and no one would blame you for what you've gone through and what you had to endure. But I think the superpower of what Sheldon Kennedy shared with me on this is, like, if you hit them with empathy and you understand, as opposed to taking things personally, the win for you is more more therapeutic, more cathartic. Because we take things personally so much as a human being as well. But I really enjoyed your story. I thought you just want to share a little bit about, how it was received, what you've done in book signings, all that sort of thing as well in your book.
Well, the book, when the book came out, it was very, I really wanted to tell the story and let people make up their own mind and what they, versus trying to get people to think of how I felt.
Yeah.
Hopefully through the process, they have a little bit more empathy for some people who are down and out and living on the street, and because you really don't know someone until you get to know them. And with myself, especially with the Buffalo situation, people were assuming a whole lot of things, and it kind of it really got the better of me. And usually I never read the press too much and what have you, but for whatever reason, this one really hurt, because it hit a lot of bells for me. They talked about I was drunk at practice. I mean, how idiotic that is. But then all of a sudden, people start believing it, and I was lazy, and all those type of things. So I just really wanted to set the record straight that I wasn't lazy. I worked. I thought I worked extremely hard. I turned down multiple year contracts, so I really wanted to get all that stuff out and let the people know my truth, and they can make assumption. But it was really hard to write. Reliving some of the past trauma that I went through as a youngster, especially leaving home when you're 16 years of age for the first time, going to a place that wasn't too friendly to First Nation people at the time. Crying myself to sleep on a number of occasions, and that was a really important year, because that was a year that I just loved hockey. I just loved it growing up. I made my own rink in my backyard. I just my skates were size 6, my feet were size 3. I didn't care. I just wanted to play. And then when I was 16 years old, that love and that desire to play wasn't there anymore. It was more of a desire to prove that I could, and that's where the whole story started.
Yeah, and I just the very first part of your book, the first half of the book, was obviously your journey as a hockey player, which I had no idea as well. This is a couple shots I took in the St. Catharines bookstore of your book sitting on the Canadian bestsellers list, which was kind of cool. Big new releases, which I thought, hey, I know that guy. I'm gonna take a picture of this, and then I went to the store and I bought it, and then there's a proud Chuck Bastie in front of Chapters just down the road from me there in St. Catharines with the book in my hand. And I took that on the road with me. I drove to Oregon and back, and I was able to, pull over and just, when I was tired, just read your book. And I really got into the first half of the book about you being a hockey player. And then what I really found was the small nuggets of value is just your human experience, and how it differs from like mine. And, I would think that I was a lower middle class kid who grew up in the Army with my dad. And I always complained that I didn't have enough as well. We always said, hey, my dad's a sergeant, but the captain's kid has more than we do. And the captain's kid say, well, the major's kid has more than we do. And the major's kid goes, well, the general's kid has more than we do. And it just never stopped. It just kept going on and on. I didn't get the understanding of like what a privilege was, because when you live in it, you don't recognize it. It's just normal for you. And, you know, if I wasn't surrounding myself with people that weren't like me, and I grew up in kind of more like, you know, Winnipeg, Manitoba, and Washington, D.C., and, you know, shockingly Caucasian on both stances, I didn't get a whole lot of information of how other people might have lived and what they went through as well. So, and then the second part of your book to me was more about, you know, your healing and, you know, what you had to go through and, you know, transitioning, and my God, how you pivoted like time after time after time, and how I had no idea about what you had to go through to be who you are right now, nor would I ever know that, because to me, you just seem like a really calm, you know, really docile guy. I've never seen you yell or raise your voice or, you know, lose your temper. And yet you're always still in the community as well. But, you know, to me, you have every reason to be upset and frustrated and angry. And I'm just wondering how you got there. How did you get that point of healing?
Geez, you know, that, you know, growing up where I grew up and seeing what I saw my whole life, and then you hear stories about the American Indian movement at the time, the takeover of Alcatraz and the powwow circuits, and we had these dance or these drum sessions. They were called the 49ers at the time, and we'd sit down, we'd sing 49 songs throughout the night, and we'd tell stories and how they how that event became a possibility where a bunch of our warriors went out to battle, and upon 100 went. Upon their return, they would sing a song for everyone that returned. So only 49 returned. So that's what they called it, the 49. So anyways, we had a lot of those things. So I had a very, very rich upbringing of who I was. I read a lot about you know, Sitting Bull and what he went through and how hard he fought for our people. So I had a strong cultural upbringing that really made me strong as an individual when I went out and fighting through some of this diversity and people telling me I didn't belong, and get back to the reservation, you stinking wahoo, you drunken Indian, all those type of things. And I'm going, our leaders in the past didn't go through what they went through in order for me to quit. I mean, what they went through was a heck of a lot harder than what I'm going through, especially with the residential school survivors. So I just really buckled down. I said, I'm going to fight for them, and especially my parents. You know, we didn't have a whole lot, but I never felt like a poor kid my entire life. I mean, and you talk about, you know, privilege and what have you. To this day, I look at my refrigerator and it's full. I could grab something to eat anytime I want, and that is a luxury I'll never take for granted, because there's a lot of kids even today that are not as fortunate. So I think the upbringing that I had, the people who led the way for me, I just really wanted to be I really wanted to be a warrior. I wanted to fight as hard as they did for me to be here. So, and I just chose hockey, and there's some big guys in the sport, and they try to be bullies and what have you. So you just gotta learn how to protect yourself a little bit better.
Yeah, and you say growing up as well. You know, I was actually fortunate enough to be in the Sioux area, and I thought I'd be remiss if I didn't stop by and see your stomping grounds. So I took a couple of pictures of your stomping grounds here in Garden River, just outside the Sioux as well. And what a great sign for your son Jordan as well, because I mean, to have that as a Stanley Cup, you know, winner on that sign for, you know, where you grew up, that must be really, really amazing. And there's a picture of me standing beside the sign as well. This was July long weekend in 2020. My girlfriend and I drove through, and we didn't know what was going on that day. And so I got a picture of, you know, there's the bingo hall as well. And then, then there was, that was July 1st weekend. And there was a story there that a gentleman, and I, you told me his name and I forget it, But my very first time ever hearing this was that he was a residential school survivor and they gave him dog biscuits. And my girlfriend and I think we're probably the only white people in that parade that we saw. And they treated us so amazingly. And I was ashamed, to walk in that parade, knowing full well, the atrocities that white people have done. And I'm just really grateful that they spoke to us and they thanked us for coming out and they asked who we were and what our names were. And they were so welcoming. And I wasn't expecting that as well. But yeah, I just thought your thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah. Those dog biscuits were probably their meal of choice to give us at the school. Because I remember, my older sister, we joke about it all the time, and it wasn't really a joking matter, but they would give us these biscuits, and they would bite them. And go, I'm not going to eat those dog biscuits. So I just refused to eat them, and then all of a sudden somebody take a nibble, then realize they were just horrible tasting things. I don't know if they were bad dog biscuits, but they certainly looked like it. So just one of those things where that's the way we're treated at school, and lining up for a simple measles shot and whatever kind of shots that you had to take when you're a child. And my sister said to me, so we used to stand in line. They used the same needle, and stop out and put it in my arm, then I'll put it in her arm, and the next person, and they never even changed the needle. So those are the type of things that we went through, and combing our hair every time we went to school for lice and what have you, and scraping our fingernails and make sure we didn't have any dirt on our. So it was quite a process to go to school, and they have to try to learn on top of that. So it was a different way of growing up, and thankfully now, and that was just a little bit compared to what the kids actually have to do in residential schools.
Yeah. And there's one other thing I want to just kind of bring up before we go with this is I watched the document or the TV series 1883, the Yellowstone spinoff, one of the prequels, and then they have 1923. And they do a great depiction of residential schools, of the atrocities. And, it was really, really, really hard to watch. Just like the murdering, the raping, the pillaging, just the antisocial psychotic behavior that these priests and these government officials would do unabashedly. And that part there was really hard to sit with. And it's just easy to change the channel or fast forward. And I had to sit with that. And I said, no, we're going to sit and we're going to watch this because, it's important that we understand this. And then I went down to Washington, D.C., and they have the museum in D.C. It's called the Museum of the American Indian. And I just thought it was a really odd name, that they have their own museum with an American Indian as a name. And I went to a person at the front desk and I said, why is it called the Museum of the American Indian? And she said, well, because they chose the name. And I just said, when would they have chosen this name? That's not a name that a native or indigenous person would ever choose. They're not Indians. And she just said, yeah, they chose it. And I said, well, what year was it? She says, 1923. So I said, oh, you mean 100 years ago? And she's just like, yeah. And Ted, walking through the hallways, they have all these treaties on the walls. And I never knew this, but all these treaties, the natives called bad paper, because the American government would sign these treaties and they never upheld a single treaty that they ever wrote. And they took all these treaties and they put them on glass and they put them on display. And as you see all these white people looking at these treaties, all you can just see is them shaking their head sideways because exactly, you just read that and you know exactly what they're reading. And it's just like, how could this happen? So when you say people seeing atrocities going by, and that's not the evil of society, being indifferent to watching evil being done and not doing anything about it is the atrocity.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of treaties that were not honored, and some that were not understood. So I'm not a big historian on the treaties, but the ones that are that my parents told me about, and some of the really important ones that we honor to this day, and especially with the Jay Treaty. That one really got to me when I was a young boy, because a lot of my family members went down to Flint, Michigan, Detroit, Marquette, and all those places to get summer jobs. And because there was no the Jay Treaty, there's no boundary for us. North America is North America.
Yeah.
It's not U.S. It's not Canada for us. We could live on either side. So, which is a great thing, because it gives us the opportunity to work on both sides, and because we are from North America. As far as the Indian, I mean, there's some people that it looks on even our status card. It says Indian status card. It doesn't say Indigenous. It doesn't say Native. It doesn't say. It says Indian status card. So, anyways, a couple of people a little bit older than I am, I'm a status Indian, and that's who I am. So they still want to carry that name.
Yeah, and I think language is so powerful that having these conversations like this is just, it's about pivoting and then moving forward with, changing the language, because when you change the language, you change the context as well. And speaking of pivoting, I want to go on to, your successes as well. Reading your book, I was really surprised about, when you won the Jack Adams Trophy. Like anybody else would be elated about this. And there's a good looking young Ted Nolan there with a Jack Adams Trophy. And I mean, like, honestly, what you did in Buffalo was just nothing short of a miracle. I mean, I know you'd mentioned, what you had done in Buffalo, and all the crazy rumors about you being lazy and, coming drunk to practices, and Dominic Hasek's wife, and all the rumors that just swirled that were just not true. So I'm really glad that you had a chance to have the final word in your book talking about that as well. But, one thing that I always thought about Ted Nolan was that you were Moneyball. You could take a small market team anywhere you went, and you did it in the Sioux, you did it in New Brunswick, you did it in Buffalo, you did it in New York with the Islanders when they made the playoffs for the first time in forever. But you have this ability just to pivot. And, I just want to know where you got that superpower from, to find a team, figure out what you need to do with limited resources. And I mean, really limited resources, and then being able to overachieve everywhere you go.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing for me was when I played the game. They said I wasn't good enough in Sault Ste. Marie to play on the AAA teams, the AA teams, and what have you. And I always felt that I was, but they picked the team. So now we're coming up to the little NHL. Over 52 years it's been in existence, and that's what the first time I had a chance to go and stay in a hotel and play and be amongst our own people, and I just fell in love with the game, and so when I started coaching the game, that was a big eye opener for me, because when I went to Kenora, Ontario, for example, the coach never asked me why I wasn't going to school. I didn't go to school. I flunked grade 10. I didn't go to school. I was out doing things that I shouldn't be doing. I was a 16-year-old kid. I had no supervision, yet no one ever asked me. When I played with the Sioux Greyhounds in the Ontario Hockey League, I got left behind twice on the bus. I mean, one, maybe it's a mistake. Twice, I'm not too sure. But anyways, and no one ever said, "Hey, Ted, how you doing?" I still remember cutting my fingers when I went to the city for the first time trying out for recreational hockey. We didn't have any gloves. I fell and someone skated over my two fingers, and 2 or 3 stitches in each finger. I sat in that lobby for 3 to 4 hours, 5 hours, waiting for my ride to come. And not one person ever came by and said, "Yeah, you're okay." So anyways, all that accumulated. So when I became a coach, the one thing I really wanted to do was ask the players if they're okay. If they're how's their school going? How's their family? Are they enjoying the city? Are they enjoying playing? And anyways, I found it got really the players wanted to talk, and the more you talked, the better relationship you had. Then the better they performed, and we did it in Sault Ste. Marie, going to 3 straight Memorial Cups. And the best part about it, all these kids graduated from high school. They're really good citizens in this country right now. There's some chiropractors, some police officers, and firemen. There's some NHL coaches. But they're all fine young men. But if you let kids do what they can do when they're unsupervised, bad things happen. So I just took that same approach going into pro hockey, and Rob Ray was one of the more tougher guys at the beginning to really get to know. And once you get to know him, boy, what a guy! And Matthew Barnaby and Pat LaFontaine, all those guys. I mean, they're just so. I just really took the way I got raised and implemented it into the sport. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot, but that didn't mean that you can't give a whole lot.
Yeah.
It can't means you can't be better than what you did. So I just really believe that everybody deserves an opportunity, and if you do things more correctly than the opposition, the chance of success is pretty good.
Yeah, and we're just going to go through a couple of pictures here. You behind the bench with the Sabres as well there. And Cameron's just going to roll these pictures as well that we can just kind of get your thoughts on. There's, 1,000 things that go down the road to being a great NHL coach. Like you said, connecting with these players. Especially you started your generation. I don't think that was the norm back then, that they would actually have these coaches. I think the assistant coaches more had that role. Whereas the head coach was more like the Herb Brooks X's and O's kind of guy, and the assistant coach was the kind of guy who would just kind of like roll down the side. I want to bring up your time in Latvia as well, because I know that when you were there, everybody there. These are pictures I took in Latvia. I was there in 2018. I met the Ice Federation there, and talking with the Latvian officials, they were just like, that guy, Ted Nolan, did more with our team with 2 million population. There's a picture in front of the rink there that I took of the Federation doors. And you took Latvia to a quarterfinal. You beat Switzerland to get them in the 2014 Olympics. And then you face Canada, and, you guys narrowly lose 2-1. And Canada doesn't surrender a goal for the next 2 games against the United States. And then Sweden in the final as well. And, like, the one thing I thought about Latvia is just like they all said the exact same thing. They said, we never had a coach that ever cared anything about us as human beings until Ted Nolan. Ted Nolan was the only guy who gave a shit about us. And some of us couldn't even speak English, and he came in here and he got to know us as human beings first. And then, put together, and then we played for Ted Nolan. And we didn't play for Latvia. We played for Ted Nolan. And that's the highest that they got. They got a bronze medal at the World Championships last year as well, which, Rigo went crazy for. But I want to bring up the one goal because there's a picture. There's a time I met you in Philadelphia at the alumni game, and we were on the side of the box. There's a couple pictures of us, when you're at the alumni game there there's Kevin and you, the alumni game. And I asked you about that one goal in Latvia. Like, how did you pull off that one goal against Team Canada of all teams?
Good offensive game, but until you start getting hit every time you touch the puck. So I would say that Babcock's message that he was giving is now being reinforced by the scrappy opponent that you're playing against.
Gets left line on the ice.
Goes to the bench.
Latvians win the draw.
Win the draw.
Stretch pass, breakaway. Lars Darzan scores! And it's accentuated now.
And then we go to the bench. He had no one behind the bench, so no emotion. We're just like, yeah, we did that. We scored the one goal against Canada that nobody else has. But I mean, that one play where the defenseman goes to the bench, you spring your forward off the front part of the bench. When you win the draw, and then you throw the puck up the middle of the ice, you might score that goal on Carey Price 1 in 10. But I want to give you your kudos for that, because that was just a fantastic goal. I mean, like, when I saw that, I lost my shit.
Well, yeah, you know what? It's funny because we did a similar play in junior hockey and with the Sault Greyhounds, and I had a wonderful when I coached the Sault Greyhounds. My first hire actually his name was Mike Zook Senior, Mike Zook Jr. played with the St. Louis Blues, but Mike was a Sault Ste. Marie legend. I mean, he made his own rink. He just loved hockey. I mean, he had more drills you could shake a stick at. He was, I think he forgot more hockey what a lot of people actually know. He was just one of those guys. And so anyways, he was the first man I went to because he was a legend. And when I was growing up in Sault Ste. Marie, everybody wanted to play for Mike Zook. So anyways, that was the first call when I got the job. I said, "Hey, Mike, you want to help me out being a coach?" And anyways, he came up with some wonderful. Anyways, one of the drills that we made at the time, we called it the old number 7, because back then they had the red line, and we couldn't stretch it too far. So we had this play. You win it back to the defenseman. Defenseman looks like he's going to ring it around the board, but actually he banks it off the board for a guy who shoots straight up the middle and sneaks behind the defenseman and gets it. So anyways, we're in Latvia, and I looked at the size of the rink, and the rink is so massive. And so anyways, we tried it on a number of, we made some tweaks to the thing. We did it probably 2 or 3 times in various different other tournaments, and it almost worked. And we practiced it. And anyways, I did it game before Team Canada. And the referee came over to my bench and he said, "You can't do that play no more." I said, "Why?" He said, "It's territorial advantage." I said, "What? I never seen that in a rule book." So I didn't know what he meant. He said, "Well, no, you can't do it no more." So anyways, I talked to Team Canada the next morning, because they go in for coaching meetings, and who's going to listen to Latvia? Nobody's going to listen to us. So I told them to play. I diagrammed the play for them. I said, "This is the play they told me I can't do." And they said, "Why?" I said, "Territorial advantage." I said, "Can you guys bring it up?" So anyways, lo and behold, we had the right to play Canada 2 nights later, and we did the exact same play that I showed them 2 days before. So it was just one of those, everything had to work out. We had to win the draw. We had to have one of our best defensemen with the puck and able to make that pass. We had to have a smart winger on the boards in order able to jump off the ice as quick as he could. Larson's, who was right at the end of the bench, that he could spring behind the defense. So everything just kind of worked, and it was a perfect pass to our best scorer on the team, and so everything just worked. And the scary part about and that kind of momentum kept us going for the rest of the game. And we pulled our goaltender, and usually with the Team Canada, they would score an empty net goal, but we kept it in their zone the whole time, and we almost tied it up. But I tell you, I was so proud, and the players were right. I just really believe that anybody can beat anybody. That if you do the right things more often than the opposition, if you work and don't turn the puck over when you're not supposed to, the goaltender makes the saves that he's supposed to, and make the occasional save that he's not supposed to, things work out. So anyways, that's my philosophy in the team, and so anyways, it worked out, and I had a wonderful experience in Latvia, one I'll never forget.
And just so people don't think I'm throwing sunshine up your ass and I'm saying this to you, I'm going to pull up the proof, because this is my Facebook status update 10 years ago. And it just happened last week. I said, "Okay, Ted Nolan, you've made your point. Now it's time for Canada to outmuscle your coaching. Go Canada, go." And then after Canada finally wins 2-1, I say, "You too close of a game with all those powerful Latvians. Wow. I think Ted Nolan gets a raise or a renewal. How he coaches should be revered in all of hockey and sport. We'll talk about it when he returns." And I'd like to have him as a guest on my radio show, Chuck's World Infinite Mojo. That was 10 years ago. I said that, and I stand beside it, because that aged really well. And so again, like me 10 years ago, giving you your props for what you did. I don't think anybody would have said that you could have done something like that with Latvia. And even going there and even hearing it firsthand from them, I was just like, yeah, I'm not surprised, because I saw it, and now you just validated what I've already thought already.
Well, you know what? the one thing I really enjoyed about my whole career is not so much playing that first game in the National Hockey League or playing junior or playing with certain players, but the ability to coach and coaching to me is like being a teacher. You want to teach your students how to make the best decisions, and the best decisions you make off the ice sometimes lead to decisions you make on the ice, and compassion for one another. So, anyways, I just I just really fell in love with it. And when I went to Latvia and seeing the environment where they came from, they came from the same kind of environment
Similar.
that I
Yeah.
came from. They weren't rich kids, and they didn't have anything given to them. They worked for everything. So, our goaltender, for example, um, um, he was an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid at the time, and he was just our practice goalie. But he had so much athleticism that Arthur Zerbe said, "Hey Ted, I think we could create this kid into." So, anyway, long story short, he gets a chance to play at the World Championships. 2 months later, he's drafted in the National Hockey League. He plays an NHL game. He has ear sets on. He has brand new pads. It was just a wonderful transformation that I just really believe if you have athleticism and you're given the opportunity, anybody can play.
Yeah. And I mean, I just think you just deserve all the kudos in the world for that. I love what you say about coaching. There's general managers that I speak to right now, and they say the exact same thing about transitioning. Is like what players go through off the ice transfers to what happens on the ice. And we're human beings. Like it's inevitable that we don't take that, and it's very palpable that we would just bring it to the table. If you're having a bad day, I owned a recruiting firm for 25 years, and we used to say happy worker, good worker. And like, I don't understand where the disconnect in understanding that is with professional athletes. That they think if they pay them millions of dollars, that they should just be fine. Like, well, no, that just makes it worse. If they had a bad upbringing or whatever, and they weren't coached, they weren't mentored, they weren't told what to do with that currency or that energy or that emotion or that trauma, then the money will just give them more of what they already had, whether it be bad and you throw money on it, you'll get more bad energy. If you had really good upbringing and they were really kind, money will just give them the ability to create foundations and charities and whatnot as well. And one of the things I want to say about you is you're speaking March the 9th at the Little NHL. It's coming up here as well. You're the keynote speaker. That happens to be my birthday. So I'm going to come watch you speak on that day. And I'm going to give myself a little birthday present because the energy that I've seen in the events that you guys had in the Little NHL is absolutely amazing. That's you and I together. I think that's 2018 or 19, before COVID happened for sure. But I mean, like just watching you, Stan Jonathan's there, Chris Simon, Reggie Leach, just to name a few that are there, Jamie Leach as well. There's a picture. There's Reggie, Stan Jonathan, yourself. That's Chris Simon and Reggie's son, Jamie, on the far right there. And you had a really great video here that I could ask you the same question, but you hit every single video point on this. And so I'm just going to ask Cam to roll that video as well, because I think this is
I'll have to say what these two fine gentlemen said. It's just an honor for us to be here, and like not both of them. I was one of the lucky ones. I had the chance to play in the first ever little NHL tournament in Espanola, Ontario, and thanks to gentlemen like Mr. McGregor back there and some of the founding fathers who developed this fine tournament. I was even to this day. I had a chance to coach in the National Hockey League, play in the National Hockey League, even coach at the Olympic Games. And if I have to look back on some of the finest memories of my playing career, was obviously this tournament. This is where it all started, and it's all about what we play the game for. It's about having fun. And if we get a few kids that could be as good as these guys playing in the National Hockey League, hey, that's great. But the biggest thing for this tournament is much more than the game itself. It's a game that teaches our kids about the importance of respect and working with one another and humanity and all those things. And it's about giving back. And through this tournament, I was very lucky too that I had two boys. Both of my sons were very fortunate. Like Reggie, There's one, Jamie, who had a chance to hoist the Stanley Cup in Pittsburgh. My son had a chance to hoist it twice with the LA Kings, and Brian Trottier told me one time when I was had a chance to do an event with him. He said, "Geez, I wish I was lucky like Ted." And man, he won 7 Stanley Cups, so how could you be not as lucky as that? But no, he said when your son wins it, and I'm quite sure Reggie would say this, when you see your children do something as unique as that, that's what it's to me. That's what it's really important, and it's I tell you, when Jordan had a chance to host it with LA Kings and bring it back to Garden River, not only once but twice, once in 2012, once in 2014, and to have a powwow back in the community with it, it was really cool.
Yeah, I just thought I'd just get your take on that as well, because obviously that was like 5 years ago. But I mean, you hammered every point. I mean, like when you watch it's one thing about coaching with your team or whatever like that, but when you have Brandon and Jordan, your sons, as well, that you can mentor and work with, and then watch them have that success as well. So I just thought we'd speak to that.
Jason, I got to do the keynote again this year. Might as well just grab that same tape, because the words have not changed. I mean, yeah. As far as memory is concerned, one of the greatest things that I'll always remember is the tournament, and our forefathers who thought of the tournament. They thought of the tournament because of players like myself who were in the surrounding areas in Northern Ontario, that they felt their band members were good enough to play on certain teams, and whether it's in Sudbury or Timmins or Sault Ste. Marie or Thunder Bay, one of those towns. And unfortunately, we weren't given a fair opportunity. So they said, "Hey, let's have our own tournament, and we could have a little trip. We can get the kids to stay in a hotel and have that experience of meeting people from different places." And I to this day is one of the greatest memories I have with hockey. And I've been back almost every year, except for the years maybe I was coaching. I had a chance to bring my 2 boys to the tournament that they're playing now. All of a sudden, their kids are playing. So it's just one of those things. I think the little NHL is probably one of the best kept secrets in the hockey world. It's 200 and something odd teams every year that comes out, and it's massive. To me, it's kind of like a big powwow on ice. I mean, it's a chance for us to celebrate each other. We have long-lasting relationships from people that we've played with 30 years ago, and it's one of those things I'll cherish for the rest of my life.
They do such a great job as well. I mean, the year I was there and we took the pictures there, they brought all the hardware. So they brought, Reggie had won the Conn Smythe as well. So Reggie Leach is there signing books, and Stan Jonathan's talking about his Don Cherry days with the Bruins. And all the hardware is there, so all the kids can walk by, see the Stanley Cup, see all the trophies that you guys have won as well. Jack Adams is there, and then just to see the energy in the room of these young kids and just how giddy they are. And part of me just was really jealous, because I was just like, I wish I could be a kid again and look through the eyes of this and look up to these heroes and these pillars in my community, and to see what they've done, despite not knowing what growing up is all about, because they're still kids yet, and then go out on that ice and just have a ball, and just not even worry about the score, and have their parents cheer them and watch them. And then, like you said, they get to stay in hotels and go out there as well. So if you're watching this podcast, we're going to air this before March the 9th. So Ted's giving a keynote, and we'll put all the links up in the podcast as well, that you can go get tickets and watch him and stop by the Little NHL as well, because he's a keynote speaker on March 9th, which is my birthday. And you can go watch him. And then if you want to just really knock your socks off, go watch the energy in the arenas of these kids playing on the Sunday on March the 10th, as well as they go out and play, because it's something that will put a smile on your face. Because if you can contain watching all that energy and not smile, I want to know what your secret is, because these kids have a ball, and it's like they're in the it's like the title says, they're like a little NHL. They're in NHL right now. And you played in the first inaugural game when you said that video in Espanola. So, that must have come from like 0 to hero from where it is right now.
But I still remember, it was held in Espanola, Ontario. And the paper mill was going strong at the time, and that smell from the paper mill wasn't the greatest smell. And my father was there, and he had a styrofoam cup of coffee from the restaurant. We just walked out, and the chill of the morning. Just one of those type of things that you'll always remember. And like I said, that's one thing that. So when I got involved with coaching more so than playing, that's the feeling I wanted the players to have, that sense of family, a sense of people care about what you do, and people, and getting back to one of the original things about me being lazy. I mean, I made my own rink in my backyard when I was 9 years old, so I don't think I was lazy, but I think the misunderstandings and misinterpretations, when I became the coach of the Buffalo Sabres, we traveled down to San Jose and down to LA, and we get back at time zone difference, and back then all the teams got up and practiced the next morning, and I'm going, that's kind of a wasted time. So I give the players a day off. Then next day we come back, we're a little bit more energized, and anyways, geez, it worked pretty good. So anyways, we go play a couple more games. I said, we have the long weekend. Why don't you guys take this day off too and enjoy your families and do some more family time with you? So I give them another day off. And then another one, but the more days off I gave, the more productivity I found the players. I did it in junior hockey, but nobody's monitoring you what you do in junior hockey. But the NHL, everything's under a microscope. And I just felt the players had a lot more energy. They spent a little bit more time, which is the most important things with their families. Kids had birthdays. So I just felt, so anyways, that's when I got called in the office and asked if I didn't like working and if I was lazy and I didn't want to. I said, it had nothing to do with that at all. It had something to do with the athlete. I think a fresh mind and a fresh body goes a long ways, and it worked for us. And right now, I think the National Hockey League has a mandatory day off once a week now. I believe.
Yeah, and one of the things you said in your book that I really loved is that you don't do things in the model of the NHL, and your dad and the mentor said, Ted, do it your way. If you do it your way and you fail, you can live with that. But if you do it somebody else's way and you fail, you'll never be okay with that, because it's like, if I can feel with my own system, I'm okay with that, but at the same time, I got to do what works for me and play to my strengths, because that's how I'm going to win at anything. And one part in your book, you're talking about Patty LaFontaine, taking that concussion that he took and then sitting a $5 million star on the bench. And you really went to bat and just said, no, he's not playing. And they take you to task and they bring you into the office and they stick it in your ass and they tell you you're going to do what we're going to tell you you're going to do. And we're paying for this. And there's a point there where as a human being, you got a mortgage to pay. You got kids to put through school. You got to be a human being as well, that is being forced to do something that ethically and morally isn't the right thing to do, and yet you do that. Yet the relationships you garner with someone like Pat LaFontaine, who you're really close with, and even your second tour around with Buffalo, that relationship with Pat came back. Obviously, the ending of that second stint with Buffalo wasn't as great as the first. But I thought we'd just speak to a little bit more about, that story with Pat LaFontaine, doing it your way and having to go against the grain of the NHL, because that's a real thing that most people don't see. And then when the narrative comes out that you can't control about lazy, drinking Wahoo, Dominic Hasek's wife, all the stuff that you can't control gets out there, the narrative gets skewed and then you get buried, and that's what happened.
Exactly. I mean, you have to make your own decisions once in a while. Even as a player, I played with a lot of myself, probably more included than not. There's a lot of games that I didn't play very well. Whether I had the cold the night before, I couldn't sleep, a wink, or my first time away from home, staying in a hotel with a stranger. I mean, somebody else from the team that I never met before, and not be able to sleep. And I go sneak out to the lobby and try to sleep out there as much as I could. going to New York City first time, and the bells and the whistles and the noise and so sometimes you're not at the best. And so, anyways, I and the coaches would jump on you and act like you didn't care that particular game. So I just felt, people have bad reasons, not because or bad games, not because they want to. There's something in their life going on that. So that's why I took a real interest in that. And so when I was watching Pat LaFontaine play, and his normal was, he's a superstar. So his normal was off the charts, but he just he wasn't playing that way. And he just came back from a serious head concussion, and which I thought they pushed it a little bit quicker than it's not like getting over a flu. And I noticed his reaction time, and I noticed his eyeballs when I talked to him. So I pulled him in and found out that things weren't very well with him. And that's when I told him we're going to give him a day off, let him go see a doctor and see what's going on. And that's when the management heard that I was going to sit him out. I didn't know I had to get approval. So anyways, they called me and said he's going to play. And I said, I already told him he's not. And he said, well, you're going to play him. I said, no, I'm not. And so I knew by not agreeing with the general manager at the time, it didn't go very well. And then he got the owner to call me and do basically the same thing. Said, Ted, you're not a doctor. I said, I'm not, but there's something wrong with him that I just don't feel ethically right to play him. Anyways, his wife, Mary Beth, came, picked him up, went to the doctor, found out that he had post-concussion syndrome. Which could have been serious complications. So I'm just really glad now that you see on the ice now, if somebody gets hit really hard, they take them off the ice right at the moment. So player safety and players' livelihood is a lot more than winning a hockey game or winning a championship. And if you can go through the season relatively healthy and injury-free, great. But once in a while, those things happen, and you don't try to play someone through an injury in order to try to get a win.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I understand that happened with your son Brandon as well when he was with the Hurricanes as well. Concussions are a big deal. I had a concussion, didn't know I had a concussion. I'm a goalie in hockey, and I got jarred, but my head didn't hit the ice. But he hit me, and my head didn't snap back. And a week later, I'm playing with Mike Gartner, and we play 3-on-3 rink in his barn up in Newmarket, and he just took a slap shot and hit me on a flat spot on my mask and knocked me out. And when I had a concussion, while I had a concussion, it knocked me out for like 18 months. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy because it was just that bad. And it's like you said, it's a real serious thing. If you actually have a concussion, if you would have put Pat out there as well, and he wasn't a big guy. I mean, he was shifty and he was speedy and he had hands and great scorer. There's no doubt. But anybody hitting him let's be honest, when you have a concussion, you're not going to be playing your best. Like Eric Lindros has been pretty clear about, he was just never the same player afterwards, after he took that concussion from Scott Stevens as well. So kudos for you for not putting him out there as well afterwards. And there's more awareness now for concussions as well. And speaking of your son, Brandon, I want to bring up, you guys have now transitioned into 3 Nolans as well, between you and Jordan and Brandon as well. There's a picture of you guys with the cup. Is that in your backyard in Garden River?
Our beautiful backyard right on the St. Mary's River.
Yeah, and I love what you've done, where you've taken the 3 Nolans platform, and now you've got hockey schools. You're actually doing what you've been doing your whole entire life. There's a picture of you and Jordan at the outdoor game in Buffalo as well. I think that was just before he went to St. Louis afterwards, or the Rampage. San
Antonio Rampage.
Alamo is. That's why I don't know why I couldn't say that as well. Yeah, and great picture there. But like what you guys go into communities now, you have hockey schools, and you just mentor kids like this. I missed you once in was it Fredericton or St. John? In 2015, we were coming back, and you had a hockey school there that we just missed you by a couple hours, and I wanted to stop in. But just talk a little bit about what you guys do with 3 Nolans and your purpose, what you intend to help empower young kids using the sport of hockey.
Oh yeah, you know what? I had a lot of wonderful opportunities in the sport. As far as playing, coaching overseas, but working with my two boys right now, doing what we do, and don't get me wrong, we're not trying to develop the next NHL player.
Yeah.
That's far from it. What we're trying to do is use the sport of hockey to encourage the kids to be the best that they could be. You look at our championships with the Sault Greyhounds. We had a couple of pro hockey players, but the vast majority of them are good citizens in this country. So that's what we want to do. We want to develop good citizens, and we use that hockey as a vehicle to do it. And when you see a young Jordan Nolan, who won part of three Stanley Cup winning teams, into a smaller community. We have a roundtable discussion. We talk about the decisions that he made when growing up, and the proper nutrition and decisions about leaving home, and when his career was over, how he went back to he wasn't going to retire the rest of his life, so he went back and became a certified fireman. Brandon, when he had a serious head concussion, it took a little while to recover, but then he went back to school and he got his business and marketing degree. So it's just one of those things. We really want to talk to the kids about the importance of nutrition and living a good life, and the importance of education and what you're going to do when you get older. You don't think about it when you're 12 years old, but hopefully a good message at that time could spark a little interest when they turn 16, 17 years of age.
Yeah, and I think I was actually fortunate enough to hear that exact same message from Mr. Snyder, who owned the Flyers. 6 months before he passed away, I was able to go to one of his galas for the Ed Snyder Youth Hockey Foundation, and I got 6 minutes with him to interview him. And he's a billionaire, and I'm a Flyers fan. And he left me with something I'll never forget. He said, "Chuck, we use hockey as the hook to give kids life skills. I don't give a damn if they go to the NHL. What I do care about is that when you give them mentorship and you give them attention and you give them structure and you give them discipline and how to persevere, they will be better people. They will be better husbands, wives, entrepreneurs, employees. But we have to use something as the hook that they're passionate about. And if they like hockey, then they come into the Ed Snyder Youth Hockey Foundation. And, I think he bought 4 or 5 arenas in the Philadelphia area, and he gave them gear, coaching, ice time, tutelage, all of that with their coaching, and all out of his own pocket. And he said, this is the only one business I've ever put my name on as a foundation, which I just thought was fantastic. So when you say the same thing, I mean, to me, it's just like, it makes sense. And I don't understand why other people don't do this. And then you take it to a foundational level, which you've done as well. You had your mother as the Rose Nolan Foundation as well. As part of your Ted Nolan Foundation as well. And you just recently had just given away $100,000 to a scholarship fund as well. There's a great picture of that. That's a lot of money, Ted.
Well, Chuck, it really is. But when we established the Ted Nolan Foundation, we're very fortunate to get a lot of support from corporate Canada and from our people in order to come to golf tournaments. This is just one of we've given out 7 of those.
Yeah.
To different universities and colleges throughout Canada. And we're very fortunate. Some of them, they match these scholarships will be going on for the next 20 years or so. But from the time we started to where we're going, and it was all based on First Nation women's education. As a presumably jock or a sports guy, we know where the real strength comes from. It comes from our women, our mothers, our sisters. And I got 6 brothers, and they all taught me very valuable lessons. But my mom and my sisters probably taught me the most important things about life in general. So I just think a strong woman becomes a strong
community.
Then all of a sudden the community gets stronger, then the nation gets stronger. So so in order to make the Rose Nolan Scholarship available was probably my one of my biggest things that I did in my life.
I'm so glad that you said that, because one of the things I think is a big misunderstood belief system is that we as men lead. And I know that nobody that I know as a male friend or family member we don't get bigger houses or bigger cars to brag to our buddies. We get bigger houses, because we want to woo women, and we need that softness. We need that inspiration, and everything that we do comes from a strong woman in our life that we want, that we need as that energy, because it's a hard world out there for a man. Like, there's always somebody out there trying to steal your job or steal your car or your house or take your place or whatever that is. And, there's only so much opposition that we can deal with as men, that when we can come back and finally sit in the arms of that one partner that we love, and just like be vulnerable with them and have them understand what we're dealing with without us even opening our mouth. And every strong man has got a strong woman that put him there. I firmly believe that.
Oh, no question. I got one of the strongest, and my wife now, who was my girlfriend at the time. I met her when she was 16 years of age, and I got drafted a couple of years later, and went to Kansas City, and she was 17 years of age when she moved in with me. And no word of a lie, if she didn't come, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because I was too afraid. I didn't know how to live in a city. I didn't know how to get an apartment, buy a car, and so without her, that there's no me for sure. With our boys, the way she mothered the children, with the way she didn't give up on me when I give up on myself a number of times. So certainly a good partner, and especially a good wife. We wouldn't be having this conversation. I wouldn't wrote the book, or even considered writing the book, because it would never even started.
Yeah, I call that a superpower, because like, we just as men will never elevate our game to having the superpower that they have, because there's that one quality that a strong or beautiful or energetic female, or just a person, will bring into your life. It's not even gender specific, but for whatever reason now, I think that the generational pivot that women have had in North America, where most women are all going to school, they all make their own money. They didn't have to be like my mother, who was tied to my father because he had a paycheck and she was a stay-at-home mom in the armed forces. And, she couldn't leave my dad because we had no money to do so, and she had no choices. And now women all have choices. And they don't need us men to be providers and protectors anymore. And that's how we've been geared and raised as young boys, to be providers and protectors. But what they do need for us is to be better communicators, to be more connected, to understand more about what emotions are and being able to talk about them. And again, I wouldn't have done any of that work if I wouldn't have had a wonderful female that came into me, like you as a coach, saw the greatness in a person before they saw it in themselves, sat with my experience, and then said, tell me, that must be really hard for you. And then now it allows me to open up, and whether it be coaching or relationships, that's a superpower.
Oh, no question about that whatsoever. Like I said, I had some really strong women in my life, and I still remember my older sister. She was going through some hard times growing up, and I told her, "Don't worry about it. I'm gonna buy you a house one day," because I just felt a strong home makes safety. And
Yeah.
So anyways, thank God I didn't have to buy her a house. She got her own, but just the thought of doing that makes me feel good.
Speaking of feeling good, I have this real thought in my head that, self-esteem and confidence are things that are nurtured. You can get small wins, but you can't get really big wins without that. And I think, again, happy worker is a good worker. So one of the things I spoke to you a little bit before the show started was our good friends over at Padskins wants to do some work with you guys at Three Nolans. And what we'd like to do is be able to offer you and your tutelage and your kids, wherever you go coach, give them name bars for their gloves and their sticks, and then be able to give them the ability to feel like they're actually a pro, or they're actually looking the part. And we're going to donate pad skins and pant skins and all the logos that you want as well, to further that as well, because we really believe, that if you're investing in young kids and you see the beauty in them before they see it in themselves, then the inspiration fires, and then they will actually do the work. And if they want to do the work when someone believes it, like that it's possible for them, because they can't see that. But if they see it from a Ted Nolan or a Reggie Leach or Stan Jonathan or, Chris Simon, any of these guys that they're peers, then it actually makes it possible for them to step into that. Hey, this is possible. This has been done. Or Jordan Tutu, for example. For all these young kids coming up right now, they need hope. They need inspiration. And if we can give them that, whatever that resources is, please just let us know. Because Padskins has been more than generous about wanting to donate to that.
Well, that's great. That's really really wonderful, because the more help we go into some of these communities, because the communities that we go into, we don't go into a suburb of Toronto or Mississauga, or we go into a lot of fly-in communities that are off the beaten path a little bit, that the kids don't have opportunities to go to a hockey school. So we bring the hockey school to them. And I tell you, it's a wonderful, wonderful experience, because now they get to see someone who looks like them. And Jordan, last place we went to, and the kids were kind of amazed, because Jordan won the cup in LA, and he's in Garden River First Nation training for the next season, or the season before he won the cup, and he was training right there in our own community. So it just shows to the kids, you don't have to live in Toronto, you don't have to live in a big center to be on the big stage. You can come from wherever you come from, and be proud of that.
And where can people find your information as well? Where they can contact you, or if they actually want to donate at all to your Three Nolans as well? Obviously, we have the banner up there on the website as well, but you have a Facebook page or Instagram or anything like the socials?
But I'm the old school of the group. But my oldest boy, Brandon, he takes care of it. He has Three Nolans. He has Facebook. He has all that, and it's 3nolans.com, I believe. And he has Instagram and all those type of things. He has followers that follow. We have pictures on it. Some of the communities we go to. So it's a wonderful resource to see some of the communities that we go into, and some of the work that we've done over the years. So so he does a wonderful job on that social media stuff.
Well, I'm glad that you brought him up as well, because I want to give another shout out to our boys here over at Shoresy as well. Thank Jared Kieso for the shirts and all the swag he sent me as well. But the beauties, the gyms, like we're gonna throw a little shade their way as well, because that's Brandon on the right and Jordan on the left. One's the intellectual character, and then the other one is the stereotypical jock hockey player as well. But let's roll this clip here, Cameron. Yeah, I think Cameron's got a video as well. But those are the guys there on the set at Shoresy as well. I was actually in Sudbury last year for a taping of it, and I got bounced pretty early because it was COVID, and they said, "Hey, you just can't stay." So I drove 5 hours through the night through a snow squall to get there. I saw Jordan and Brandon going into the trailer as well, and I thought that was actually really funny that I was just getting my coffee. They were starting their shift, and I was just leaving my shift as well too. But what do they think about being on Shoresy?
It was so funny, because they were surprised they got a call from the show, asking if they'd be interested, and anyways, they just loved the opportunity to do the show and add on to their things that they've been able to do in their lifetime. But it was so funny, because Jordan had the honor of promoting the show this year, and anyways, he told me he was in the elevator with another co-star, or the star of the show, and there was a young person inside the elevator with him, and he whispered up to his father, and the father says, "Well, ask him." And so he says, "Are you Jim from?" So, and Jordan goes, "Dad," he said, "I was part of 3 Stanley Cup winners." Yeah. And people know me more for Jim than my.
You're not even Jim. You're a Jim. You're one of the Jims.
One of the Jims. So, anyways, they're really enjoying it, and so who knows what it's going to do down the road. But right now, they're really enjoying it.
Well, I actually, when I was talking to Jared on the phone, Jared actually played on the Kincardine Bulldogs Junior C Hockey Club here as well, so he's going to tie to us. So the Sudbury Bulldogs are an off-take the Kincardine Bulldogs. He grew up in Listowel, as everybody knows. But when he took Letterkenny and he went and, spun Letterkenny off to be Shoresy, I don't know where he comes up with the writing. So I was asking him, like, how do you do that? How did you cast? And I said, the Nolan brothers, like, how did you cast the Nolan brothers? Kind of an obscure cast. And he just said, not really. Like, first of all, we were looking for hockey players, first and foremost, that could play. And those kids can really play. And then on top of that, we just said, hey, listen, can you adapt to this or that? And it wasn't that stretch of a role from being a hockey player to being a hockey player on a set. And they transitioned amazingly, and they've just done a great job. And they've almost become like a cult, classic, like a slap shot, in the movie Slap Shot with the Jims, being the Hanson brothers as well. So, kudos to you to, being a father to the two Jims.
Yeah, it was funny because Brandon, he called me up and said, Dad, I got to go. We've got to study our lines tomorrow. So, wait, what's your line? Hi, I'm Jim. So it was just kind of making up fun. He said, that's my line tomorrow. So I better go study. So anyway, they're having a real good time with it. And so anyways, we'll see how long. Hopefully it goes on for a few more seasons.
Yeah, and honestly, it's just it's really good fun as well, and the stuff, the parodies that are able to take off that as well. Life after hockey, it finds us all, doesn't it? And if you can transition to something like that on the big screen, kudos to them. And if you can watch Shoresy, I believe they're on Crave right now as well. Season 2 is finished as well, so you can go there and download that as well, and give Shoresy a plug as well, because we love Jerry Kizo, we love all the guys as well. Terry Ryan, that's on the show as well, plus the two Jims, the Nolan brothers as well. So Ted Nolan, we want to thank you for coming on the show as well. It's been a long time coming for me to have you on the show. I've been a big fan of your work, first time caller, long time listener. But at the same time, I'm just glad that you made the time for us to share your story. I'll leave the links for the book as well, for Ted Nolan's Life in Two Worlds. Fantastic read. I mean, if you really want to understand the mind of a great coach and how he got there, go ahead to Amazon and pick up that book, or go to Chapters, wherever you pick up your books as well. And then please, if you like the book, do us all a favor, just leave them a review on Amazon. The reviews are probably more valuable than buying the book. And if you can take the time to read the book, please take the time just to leave a review of what you thought of Ted's story as well. So Ted, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Chuck, thanks very much for having me on. And it's good to reminisce some of those old stories back in especially with junior hockey and playing all that stuff. So it's kind of it's good to reminisce once in a while and remember where you came from.
Looking forward to your keynote speech on March 9th in Toronto as well at the Little NHL. Like I said, we'll put all the links into the bio and the podcast as well. And we'll see you next week. And that way you can actually sign my book. So that way I can actually have a personalized copy from Ted Nolan.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Chuck, and Cam. Thanks very much. Nice meeting you too.
That's great. Thanks, Ted. That's Ted Nolan, former Jack Adams Trophy winner. Greatest, I guess the Jack Adams is the best coach of the year as well. And I'm just really glad that Ted actually joined us on the show as well today. So I'll bring up my partner in crime, Cam LaRock, and see Cam, what'd you think of the interview?
Chuck, that was amazing. I mean, love hearing from one of the Nolans, of course. And I wanted to start by just addressing what he talked about in his book earlier on, with just all the rumors going around about who he is and what he did and all that nonsense. And instead of, taking a different route, he just said, okay, think what you want to think. I'll put it in my book, and we'll see what happens in the end. But I got my story, you got yours, and we'll leave it at that. And I don't know, I just respected that. I thought that was great.
And I can't believe, like, he just took the high road every single opportunity in that book. And I'd heard all those rumors. And again, like, I don't want to say that I was so ignorant. I just didn't know. And then, when I met Ted like 10 years ago or 12 years ago, I actually asked him about the Dominic Hasek thing. And it just blew my mind as well. But I mean, it's really sad, I think, that you actually have to write a book, to come out and defend your good name of the mudslinging. And it can be a really vicious world out there, especially in NHL. When you get dirtied, you're called a GM buster is what he was called. But again, like, to me, like, I just see the greatness in Ted Nolan, coming from very humble beginnings, has every reason to just, drink or hit the bottle or do anything other that trauma would cause. And yet time after time after time, he's able to pivot and just move forward, do the healing, do the work, help inspire other people, and just, relive and have success wherever he's gone and everything he's ever touched as a coach as well. So, kudos to Ted Nolan. I think his story is very, very underrated. I think more people should actually read his book and understand, what a great coach he has actually been. I think he has that due.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that one clip from Latvia. What a goal! What a play set up. But also another thing, just his consciousness to not play an injured player, and that's such like new age thing. But even back then, he had that idea of,
Way
okay,
under the
this guy plays, but what about in the long run? Like he might go out, score a goal, win the game, whatever, but then he can't talk in 10 years or little things like that. You never know what's going to happen to a player, and you got to be safe and can't put a win ahead of a player's health.
Yeah. And I'll go back to the same thing I said, doing my due diligence with Ted, talking about the people in the NHL that have either worked for him or worked with him or played with him. When Pat LaFontaine came back to Buffalo as well, when he was hired, one of the very first calls he made was to Ted and to bring him back into Buffalo as well. But again, like that's where you do the right thing and karma finds you, as opposed to you hiding behind indifference or whatever. And it takes integrity to have morals and to fight against the system that's not geared to be kind to everybody. And I mean, time and time again, Ted Nolan has done that as well. So I'm just good to see him finally in a healthy space right now as well. And the two gyms are beauties, of course. And we're happy to have him on the show.
Yeah, Chuck, I'm glad we brought up the gyms at the end of the show there and finally got to know the story behind that shirt and why you're so poorly dressed today.
You know why? Because the gyms are fucking beauties. That's why.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just a bunch of beauties. Well, listen, I want to thank you for joining us today for Ted Nolan's podcast. It's been a long time coming as well, but really glad. As I always say, I understand there's 1,000 other places that you could be as well, that you've chosen to be with us today as well. So I want to thank our friends over at Padskins who are now going to create this opportunity for Three Nolans as well. I want to thank our sponsors, Holy Chuck Burgers and Nick's Chicks and Nash Sports as well. These are all people that, just see, what can be done in communities and want to go out there and help other people as well. And if you, in your own life, think that you can go help somebody or do something, like we all live in a starvation diet of acknowledgement. If you can give acknowledgement and just more praise lavishly, and you can see where you can make a difference in the community that you live in, doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be a huge donation. It could be your time. It could be, mentoring or being a big brother, big sister. Just do the work that you have to do to make the contribution, because I promise you down the road, the payback is tenfold. And that's how you change worlds. So with that, I want to thank you for joining us here on Chuck's Infinite World of Infinite Mojo. We'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping in.